Hey creepers, welcome to the Mrs. Night Terror channel. Join me as I tell you spooky, shocking, and scary bedtime tales. Each story I tell is a fictional narrative, so don't worry too much about it coming true. If you think you can handle it, listen closely and imagine yourself being part of each and every story I tell. I want to say thank you to each and every creeper out there. This is the next episode of my scary story series, and surely not the last. If you enjoy what you hear, be sure to give me a follow and leave a comment below to let me know what you enjoyed the most. Today, I have a truly terrifying story for you that'll send shivers up your spine. So grab a blanket, turn off the lights, and let's get started with this not-so-true crime nightmare. Tonight's night terror is called Small Spaces. The small studio apartment had always been a sanctuary for Harold. It was a cramped, dimly lit space where everything had its place. The walls were lined with bookshelves filled with old, dusty volumes, and their air carried a faint scent of must and aged paper. Harold thrived in his environment, finding comfort in the confined quarters that reminded him of the cage he grew up in. His mother, a frail and sickly woman, had kept him locked away, claiming it was for his own protection. The small spaces had become his refuge, his shield against the world. For years, Harold lived a reclusive life, venturing out only when necessary. His routine was simple and predictable, offering a sense of security that he clung to desperately. But everything changed the day he met Claire. Claire was unlike anyone Harold had ever encountered. She was quirky and eccentric, with a wild mane of blonde hair and a wardrobe that seemed to be a chaotic blend of colors and patterns. She breezed into his life like a whirlwind, bringing with her a sense of warmth and love that Harold had never experienced before. Claire made him feel calm, accepted, and for the first time in his life, truly happy. Their courtship was swift and intense, each finding solace in each other's peculiarities. Harold marveled at how effortlessly Claire navigated the world, her carefree spirit balancing his deeply ingrained need for control and order. They married within a year of meeting, their love for each other burning bright and fierce. With marriage came change. Claire's home was a stark contrast to Harold's tiny apartment. It was a sprawling estate situated outside of the city, surrounded by acres of land with no neighbors in sight. The openness of the place unsettled Harold at first, but Claire's presence reassured him. They moved in together shortly after the wedding, and Harold tried to adapt to his new surroundings. At first, life seemed perfect. They spent their days exploring the vast property, enjoying each other's company, and building a life together. But as the months passed, Harold's unease began to surface. The expansiveness of the land felt oppressive, and the isolation that once comforted him now fed into his paranoia. Harold started acting erratically. He would spend hours at a time standing by the windows, peering out into the distance, his eyes darting back and forth as if he was searching for something only he could see. He muttered to himself, fragmented sentences and half-formed thoughts spilling from his lips in a constant stream of incoherence. Claire tried to reach out to him to understand what was happening, but Harold remained distant, lost in his own mind. The once happy home grew very tense, and it felt like it was filled with an air of uncertainty. Claire watched helplessly as the man she loved spiraled into a state of fear and paranoia. his behavior becoming more erratic with each passing day. The spacious house, which had once seemed like a dream, now felt like a prison. Harold's behavior grew increasingly crazy, a descent into madness. It was swift and it was alarming. He began to board up the windows, shutting off the light and any connection to the outside world. Rooms of the house were closed off one by one until he no longer ventured upstairs where their bedroom was located. Instead, he sectioned off a part of the living room, creating a makeshift fortress with all of his necessities. It was as if he was camping out, but permanently, retreating further into his own mind. Claire watched helplessly as Harold withdrew. She would cry herself to sleep in their bed, the space beside her cold and empty. She waited, night after night, hoping Harold would join her, that he would come to his senses and realize that he was doing harm. He was ruining the marriage. But he never did. His confinement was complete, his irrational thoughts consuming him entirely. Desperation and loneliness gnawed at Claire. One night, her emotions reached a breaking point. She confronted Harold, her voice trembling with anger and sorrow. "I can't do this anymore, Harold. I want a divorce." Harold looked at her with vacant eyes, his mind too far gone to register the gravity of her words. "You don't understand," he muttered, his voice a monotone echo of the man he once was. "It's not safe out there. We have to stay here." Claire's heart shattered. She was angry, overwhelmed, and terribly lonely. Her words had no impact on him. He was a prisoner of his own making, and she felt powerless to reach him. She spent the night in tears, alone in their bed, the weight of her decision pressing down on her. The next day, Claire returned home back from work, her mind heavy with the thoughts of what the future held. As she stepped inside, she noticed the living room was empty. The makeshift fortress Harold had constructed was gone. A surge of hope and joy filled her heart. Had Harold came to his senses? Had he realized he didn't want to lose her? Her heart pounded as she moved through the house, calling out his name. But there was no response, only a deep, unsettling silence. Then she heard a noise from the basement. It was faint. Claire's pulse quickened. She approached the basement door, her hand trembling as she reached for the handle. She peered down the dark staircase, the shadows seeming to stretch out and envelope her hand. "Harold," she called, her voice shaky and uncertain. A noise like the scuffling of feet came from below. Claire hesitated. A knot of fear tightened in her stomach, but she took a deep breath and descended the stairs, the air growing colder with each step into the basement. Claire reached the bottom of the stairs, her breath catching in her throat. All joy and hope that she had felt moments before were now gone, replaced by a sinking feeling of dread. The dim light revealed the truth. Harold hadn't dismantled his fortress. He had simply relocated it to the basement. In the center of the room stood a cage, eerily similar to the one Harold had grown up in. The sight of it made Claire's heart break, and tears welled up in her eyes. "Harold," she called out, her voice trembling. "I'm right here." Harold's voice came from behind her. She turned around just in time to see him closing the door to the basement, securing it with a padlock. "What are you doing?" Claire yelled, panic rising in her voice. Harold's face was stoic and still, his eyes devoid of the man she once knew. "This is for your own good," he said, his tone eerily calm. Before Claire could react, Harold shoved her into the small cage. She stumbled, her cries echoing off the cold concrete walls. "No, no, no!" she screamed. "Please, please help me." Harold stood outside the cage, his expression vacant. As Claire's pleas filled the air, he turned away, walking back towards his tower of security screens and weapons, leaving Claire trapped in the cage. Her screams grew louder, filled with desperation and terror. But it was too late. And as we draw the curtains on this chilling tale, our hearts still racing and our minds haunted by the echoes of the unknown, remember that the darkness we've explored is but a glimpse into the abyss that dwells within us all. In the realm of the mysterious, we find both terror and fascination, and in these shadows, we confront the depths of human nature and the uncharted territories of the universe. Thanks to each and every creeper out there who takes time of their day to listen to my horrifying stories. Remember to follow me on TikTok, Instagram, and X. Also, be sure to check out my Patreon for much darker tales, ones that are far too naughty for YouTube. And fear not, as you step back into the realm of the familiar, let the shivers down your spine remind you that life's greatest mysteries are the ones that keep us awake at night, asking us to peer into the darkness and challenge the boundaries of our understanding. Until next time, dear listeners, may your dreams be undisturbed, and may you find solace in the light of day. Good night and sweet dreams, if you dare.